The vice chair sits in for the chair.
Check.
Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, June 4th, 2019, at 7 o'clock p.m. I'd like to call to order the Town of Sutton Board of Selectmen's meeting, and I would invite you all to join us in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business is public forum. Public forum is limited to 5 minutes per topic. Discussion or comments about town employees or agency members shall be avoided so as not to violate individuals' rights. Is there anyone here for public forum? Seeing no one. Next is the Board of Selectmen's minutes from May 21st, 2019.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes for the May 21st meeting of the Board of Selectmen as presented.
Second?
Motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So that is 4 and 1 abstention. Our next order of business is our annual Selectmen's reorganization. So at this time, I would take a nomination for chair.
If I could, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Dave Hall to be chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
Second?
Thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That is 5-0. And then I would need a motion for vice chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Wendy Mead to be vice chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And lastly, we need a motion for clerk.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Jesse Lemonick for chair of the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So now what we have to do is play musical chairs and move everybody around. A little bit around.
Yeah, not too bad.
You
Just-
don't have to,
Just one switch.
we don't have to read anything else tonight, that's nice, huh?
I know. It's all Jesse for reading now.
You can do it.
Oh, you're gonna miss it.
So the polling,
Yeah, the poll hearings. I'll get my jacket.
oh, no, I'm not gonna put it.
Oh, come on, keep you warm.
Now, if it's okay with the board, I'd like to say a couple of words. First of all, we have a new member tonight. Jeffrey Bannon, CPA, joins us from the Finance Committee. Jeff, as I mentioned, is a CPA with his own practice. He served on the Finance Committee for something like 10 years and joins us tonight. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. I think it's 10 years, but this is a really good group. I'm very excited to be here. And I think we can, with the talent that's on this board, really accomplish a lot over the next year at least, and hopefully going forward too. So.
Great. Well, welcome. And picking on that, if I could just say, at our last meeting, we said our goodbyes to John. John retired after 50 years of service to the board with 12 years, 50 years of service to the town, 12 years on this board. And you know, personally, I also had an opportunity to serve with Mike Chizzy, Paul Maynard, and you know, as I mentioned last time, there was a whole generation of people that served from that sort of age group, that generation. And for the first time in a long time, this board won't have anybody from that group serving. So, you know, I find myself after 6 years or so on this board as the senior member of the board. So, you know, you can call it the end of an era or just generational change, but objectively, this is kind of a young board. But it would be a mistake, I think, to call it an inexperienced board. So I had to write some of this down so I wouldn't forget. But none of us actually were born in Sutton, but we have an average of about 25 years of time here in town. All of us have had kids that have spent some or all of their time as students here in the Sutton school system. We've all been coaches and parent volunteers and just generally very active in the community. This board has 2 attorneys, 2 accountants, and a banker. And maybe more relevant specifically to this conversation, we've all had really extensive service on different boards around town. So we have two former members of the school committee, both as vice chair or multiple times as chair. Jonathan was on historical and then also was a member of the planning board for a long time with a couple of terms as chair. Jeff and I both served on the finance committee for long periods of time. Both of us served as chair of that committee for a long time. Wendy has been the chair of two different building committees in town, so the middle school, high school project, as well as the police station that we're just about to open. And Jesse, you're over here now.
Yeah.
Jesse, I say, is like the board's unofficial ambassador to the town, because he sort of does a little bit of everything. So, you know, my point is that you know, together we collectively have a lot of experience that isn't necessarily reflected in tenure on this board. We have diverse backgrounds, diverse interests and opinions, but you know, as I thought about this, kind of the bond that we have is a real sincere interest and commitment to civic engagement. That's just been who we are. So, you know, I say individually, we may not always be right, but this board, I feel really confident that we will support each other, cajole each other, challenge each other, so that more often than not, I think collectively we will be right. So, you know, I thank you for the opportunity to serve as chair. It's a great honor. There's been, you know, I've had the privilege of serving with a lot of people that have sat in this chair that have been really good. So I'm mindful of the history and respectful of all those people that have been here before me. But I am particularly happy to serve with this group of people. I think this is a really great group, and echoing what Jeff just said, I really look forward to the next year with you. So, thank you very much. All right, next up is a public hearing on Town Farm Road. If the clerk would read the public notice.
As advertised in the May 16th, 2019 Millbury Sutton Chronicle, public hearing notice. In accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 166, Section 22, you are hereby notified that a public hearing will be held at 7:05 p.m. on Tuesday, June 4th, 2019, in the Sutton Town Hall upon petition from Verizon for permission to place one pole solely owned, pole numbered T1S, on the northwesterly side of Town Farm Road at a point approximately 450 feet southwesterly from the center of Overlook Drive. Also, for permission to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with poles and buildings as each of said petitioners may desire for distributing purposes. Plan file herewith marked number 1A3JU8A.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and I would declare the public meeting open. And if you could just identify yourself.
Sure, my name's Sherry Story. I'm here on behalf of Verizon in support of their petition to place a pole on Town Farm Road. The abutters were notified, and I'm here to take any questions that you might have.
Can you tell us what the purpose of the poll is?
It's my understanding that this pole 1, which is kind of on the intersection of Boston Road and Town Farm Road, it's kind of in that little island area, that was anchored to a tree, which it's my understanding that the tree and the guy wire came down in a storm. So in order to anchor that pole, to offset pull from that pole 1, they're looking to place a pole on the northwesterly side of Town Farm Road, kind of diagonally, in order to offset pull and to anchor that pole that's in the center.
Okay. Questions from the board, Jesse?
I don't really have any questions. I'd just like to comment that I think it's a good idea to, to be placing this, because while I don't live in that area, I do remember when the trees came down and there was power outage and a significant number of residents in that part of town were affected. So anything to secure the power lines, I think I'm in full support of.
It's never a good idea to anchor a pole to a tree, And when possible, we'd like to, make a more stable
Yeah.
situation, for the continued distribution of electricity and telecommunications.
Plus, I'm sure with the newer pole, it'll be more durable and.
Definitely,
Yeah.
they age,
Yep.
they rot.
Like
So,
everything.
Like everything.
Most important for me, it looks like all the department heads signed off, so I have no issues.
Great, thank you. Wendy?
No questions, just, again, to ratify that the highway department signed off on it, so I feel comfortable that it's not in an area that might cause a motor vehicle issue, so I have no questions or concerns.
Jonathan?
I have no questions either. I think this makes sense, and I have no problem with it at all.
Jeff?
I have no issues or questions.
So my only question is, if it's not best practice to anchor to a tree, why would you suppose it was done that way to begin with?
I don't have an answer to that. It's not best practice, but it's been going on for years and years, and,
Yeah.
and I have no knowledge as to how long it may have been
Sure.
anchored to that tree.
Could have been a long time.
Yeah, could
Okay.
be a long time.
All right. Well, other than that, I think the new pole and all the plans look fine to me, so I would accept a motion to close the.
Do you want to open it to the public? or open it to the-
Yeah, good point. Is there anybody here that'd like to speak on this issue? No? Then I would take a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to approve poll hearing number 1A3JU8A from Verizon as advertised in the May 16th, 2019 Millbury Sutton Chronicle.
Second?
Can I hold that and actually close the public hearing first?
Perhaps.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now we can move on to Wendy's,
Well, I believe the motion has been made and has been seconded.
Seconded,
Do we
yeah.
have to go through the
oh,
process
was it
again?
seconded? Okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah, Jonathan seconded.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
That's 5-0 vote. Thank you very much for
Thank
coming.
Thank you.
Some of you may have heard, our next agenda item is ratification of a new police sergeant. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As everybody is now aware, that I have appointed Mr. Joseph Fortunato as a sergeant for the Sutton Police Department. Sergeant Fortunato has over 20 years of experience with the Sutton Police Department. I've made this appointment pursuant to Article 2, Section 2.2 of the town bylaws, and I respectfully ask for the board's ratification of this appointment, so.
Joe,
Chief,
would you
Joe?
like to come up?
Evening. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening.
Evening, Chief.
Congratulations to everybody on their new roles, or condolences, whatever it may be. So as Jim had just mentioned, we're here requesting a ratification of appointment for a police sergeant. And I'd like to get into a little bit of what brought us here tonight. I'll be somewhat brief, but I think there's some important factors that need to be discussed. First of all, I'd like to just briefly go in review to the board and more or less portray what a sergeant's position does in the Sutton Police Department, because I think it's, we do this not frequently, but I think a little insight into what the responsibilities are is probably helpful. As much as I don't like to say it, it's probably the most important position in the police department. I'd love to think the chief is the most important position, but that's not the case. Jim, you said right?
No.
So, it's a first-line supervisor's position. So in your everyday jobs, I'm sure you can imagine a first-line supervisor and how important it is, and how things that are overlooked by a first-line supervisor can effectively blow up and cause a lot of problems that could have been efficiently dealt with years, months, weeks, days earlier. So a police sergeant in that role is probably our best eyes and ears for a lot of things. Any problems that may arise, on an operational level, whether it be, hey, listen, we got a guy barricaded, he's making some suicide threats, and, a sergeant, a police sergeant, is a guy that's gonna handle that call. There's no police chief, there's no police lieutenant, there's more than likely probably not another supervisor there. So the police sergeant is a guy that's, well-schooled in the law, knows the procedures, hopefully knows the capabilities of all the men and women who work under him, and is also in charge of the dispatch portion of the police station. But more importantly, a sergeant, especially in a department like the Sutton Police Department, acts probably most importantly as a role model. With a number of, I would guess, and I don't say this in a derogatory fashion, but the new generation, and it's not I forgot what the upcoming generation is, not the millennials, but the one after that. We're starting to see some of those trickle in, and in fact, there's a few of them behind us tonight. So they obviously have a difference of opinion, and it's the police sergeant's job to more or less kind of not dunk them underwater, but like just let them know what the culture is of police work. So, they do that effectively, and more or less create I guess an example on how to behave, and that goes leaps and bounds beyond just wearing stripes on your arms. It goes to like how to treat coworkers and how to treat the public, and and more or less how to treat people like people. And that's what we need, and that's what we expect, and that's what we want in first line supervisors. But it's increasingly important at that level. We expect that from all of our employees, just like I'm sure in your workplaces they expect that. But, it's a position that could really have a detrimental effect on any agency, whether it be, a police department or the military, or because, effectively the buck stops with the sergeant. The sergeant has to put all his personal beliefs and thoughts behind more or less, and in front of those personal beliefs and thoughts, has to think about the agency and the structure and the mission. So that may mean frequently upsetting the apple cart, whether it be, with some people that are close to him or her, and say, no, we're not gonna put up with that, or no, that's not fair, that's not the way we're gonna do it. So, there's a lot to entail in a police sergeant in a department such as our size. And lastly, I think, and probably the most important responsibility is of a sergeant, and this is something that I think that I would convey to Sergeant Fortunato or any sergeant, is they need to keep me and the lieutenant more or less in check. And I don't say that in a bad way, but they need to have the fortitude to come to us and say, hey, listen, guys, that's not right. This isn't right, or this is wrong, or we should do it that way. And that's how you build cohesiveness, and that's how you build a properly functioning unit. And, that's what we're expecting, and that's why we think it's such an important role. So to get us here tonight, we had a process in 2017. We had an outside company come in. We suggested that, whoever was eligible to take there was a test, and there was an assessment center. Basically, the test encompassed mass criminal law, policies and procedures, little things like operational and, issues like, how would you handle this call, or how would you handle that call? And for those that passed the test, they went on to an assessment center, which is basically, they had more or less actors in a real life situation where they assessed the candidates and how they handled things and how they conducted themselves, how they spoke, how they diffused things. And, that in itself is quite a process. They literally had role players that started crying, and they really got into it. And it was a difficult scene to navigate for somebody that's, it's hard being a police officer, and, we're used to going to a scene and telling people what to do, but, you get behind these boards and assessment centers, and you're second guessing yourself, like, did I do that right, or am I gonna do it right? So, I'm happy to say that all the candidates were within an average, I think, of 1 or 2 or 3 points from each other. So, you know, I'm proud of the fact that everybody that competed in that process came out, you know, relatively on an even keel. So before you tonight, you know, is Joe Fortunato, and as Jim mentioned, he's got almost two decades of police experience, and you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, you probably don't know about Joe Fortunato. You know, some of them I'll tell you tonight, but there's, you know, like any other person, there's a lot more to it. But you know, he's been a pretty solid guy in our department. He's certainly a guy that takes his fair share of ribbing and harassment from coworkers, and he handles that well. You know, he's a reliable, pretty rock solid street cop, as far as I'm concerned. Not afraid to get his hands dirty. He's been active with the local drug task force for a number of years, and you know, if you're out and about in this town on any given night, you're probably going to see him stopping a car or searching a car or giving somebody sobriety tests, and basically an all-around good police officer. And that's one of the traits, I think one of the most important traits that we need to look for when promoting somebody. You know, to go back, I want to say last year, just to give you an example, it was after shift change, and I could hear Joe in the back room, and there was this animated phone conversation that he was involved in with somebody. And for the first minute or two, I said, oh, it's going to be one of his kids. Because the way he was talking, like, he was like, oh, don't do that. That's not a good idea. And, hey, we just discussed this last week. And it went on and on and on and on. And I'm like, it has to be one of his kids. I know he's got some younger kids, and he's probably trying to convince them on what to do. And finally, it got to the point where Sergeant Fortunato said, you know what, I'm just coming down. And he hung up the phone, and he stormed out of the back room. And I was like, geez, I overheard the whole thing, and I wasn't eavesdropping. You couldn't help but hear it. And on the way out of the room, he blurted, so-and-so just called me, and he's been drinking all day, and he's going to burn his house down. And I was like, geez, you just had a conversation with this guy for about 15 minutes. And that stuck with me because, you know, we didn't get a 911 call. We didn't get any type of emergency call. The guy himself actually called the police station and asked for Joe. And this whole conversation ensued after that. And, you know, as we usually do, he went down to the residence and kind of talked this guy off the ledge. And I don't know if we ended up putting him in protective custody or anything, but my point being is, you know, it goes back to treating people like people, and I think that's a classic example of what we need to do as far as to do our jobs. Right now, the police profession is probably under somewhat of a microscope, and we maybe somewhat deserve that microscope look, but, you know, things like that example, I think are what's gonna win us back with public trust and, you know, transparency. So I'm confident tonight that my request for his appointment is, you know, on solid ground. And I certainly, you know, in just some recent conversations have had laid the groundwork of some expectations that I think Joe is going to rise to the level and certainly do the right thing and make the department a better place to work. And you know, this last thing that I'm going to say is probably something I've said more than police station in the last year. And it's something that I've pretty much beat over the guys that work here, and you know, when we make decisions and when we do things and we hire, and I always say you need to be a good person first. You know, you need to be a good person. Like, you could be a great cop, but you could be a real jerk, and that's fine. I mean, you could probably be successful somewhere, but you know, we need to have a good person and hire good people and build on that foundation. And, you know, then we can be a better police officer or a better sergeant or a better lieutenant or even a better police chief. I don't know if that's even possible, but, you know, we got to set a goal, right? So I think before you tonight, we have a capable sergeant, and I know for a fact, you know, I know he's a good person. And I know his family, I know his mom, I know his dad, I know his brother's a police officer in Millbury. So I think with that being said, I would respectfully request your ratification of an appointment of Joe Fortunato to police sergeant.
Chief, that was excellent, thank you. Joe, would you like to say some words?
I'd just like to thank the board and the chief for this opportunity. It's an exciting time at the police department, with the new police station opening very shortly, and I'm just happy to have this opportunity in my new role.
Great, thank you. I'm going to open it up to the board. Jesse?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Sergeant. Could I call you Joe? Is that all right?
Joe's perfect.
All right, we go back a few years after all. First off, I have to apologize because apparently I let the cat out of the bag last week or our last meeting. You know, I saw it on Facebook. You know, stuff on Facebook. You don't always believe it, but again, I was just so excited when I saw the posting because, I think you're gonna definitely serve well in your new role. Although I'll tell you, after hearing what the chief was saying at the beginning part of his statement, I don't know why anyone in their right mind would want to do that. But then, here in the second half, I understand that, I think you're going to be a good fit. I definitely think it's an exciting time. I don't want to speak ill of any past members of the department, but, my feeling is that I think we are always trying to do better. But, the department as a whole is the strongest it's been in many, many years. And it goes to leadership of the chief, the lieutenant, even the gentleman in the back, standing there, how you doing? And all the rest. But it also goes to the individual patrolman as well. And you guys are a team. And it's just, I don't know, it's just very exciting. I wouldn't have wanted to be on the review board, though, hearing how close those participants were. But ultimately, I think we definitely have the best candidate. So I'm going to pass the mic, other than leave you with just congratulations and best of luck, and to make sure he stays in line and the LT in the back, too. Hold him to account.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Wendy?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Congratulations, Joe. It's
Thank you.
well-deserved.
Thank
And
you.
it's an honor for you and for us to have you here with all your years of experience. But I think what really resonates for me is what Dennis was saying, that we're looking for good people. And as a resident of the town, whether it's, accompanying an ambulance to someone's house who's in need and crisis, or whether, you're pulling somebody over and, their level of anxiety or whatever their issue might be, that's critical. And I think that's what makes this town's department as amazing as it is that isn't lost. And we all appreciate that, and I welcome you very much in your new role.
Thank you.
And enjoy the new police department.
Thank you.
Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And congratulations. I think based on the description, it's just a well-fitting role for you, and the amount of time that you've served the town and your commitment to being an excellent police officer will, as you've continued to serve the town, will continue into the future. It's a job that's probably often thankless at times, and a job that you probably get a lot of joy out of as well. And I'm just really excited that we have people like you in our community who are willing to really protect us all. So congratulations, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, duly noted as to the relative importance of the sergeant position versus that of the chief. But, as the chief went through the steps of the selection process, and I knew that just from working in the finance committee before that had happened, but when you actually outline all the different steps or hurdles that you had to go through to get to this point, I'm really impressed by the rigor of the process that occurred. It looks like they got the right guy for sure. I was also kind of impressed when you talked about the duties and the qualities in a sergeant, in the position itself, but also in Joe. So, one of the things that I think, certainly not me or members of the board, I think we do appreciate that, but I think the public as a whole really takes it for granted because we expect that. And I mean that in the best sense, that you guys, you do the job. And because of that, we do take it for granted in this town. So thank you for what you do for us. Congratulations
Thank you.
and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps Jeff and I think similarly, because what I took from all of that was more important than the chief and dunk them underwater. Shallow, maybe. Chief, also, you know, I appreciate that you took the time to tell us and the public really all that it takes to be a sergeant and what that means. And again, also, the process that we went through to get to this day. I think it's a testament to you, really, in the development of your staff to have so many good candidates come out of that process. And, you know, for me, it's always rewarding to know that we have the candidates in-house that we can promote from within. You know, there's a real benefit, I think, to 20 years of experience here, you know, and have so much experience with the town, rather than having to bring somebody in from the outside. So, you know, I'm equally confident that we have a great candidate in front of us, and we welcome you. And congratulations, you know, 20 years of service. We don't have that many sergeants. There's not that many of these opportunities, so well-deserved.
Thank you.
So, good luck. Thank you both for coming. Thanks for everybody for coming. And I think we have a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to ratify the appointment of Sergeant Joseph Fortunato.
Second?
That's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
You guys are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff.
Geez, with a crowd like this, it's a good thing we approved it.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Thank
Yeah.
you all.
Have a good night.
Take care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
There's a party someplace after this.
They better be. They'll be down at Club.
What's that? Yeah, sure. I'll explain later.
Yeah.
All right. Things have settled down a little bit. We can move on to our next article. Agenda item number 5, we have a discussion regarding plastic bag ban with Chase Lindley. Jim, I don't know if you...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Chase, there you are. Why don't you come on up? I met Chase at the MVP grant process that Doreen DeFazio ran out at Blackstone National Golf Course. And he was talking about a ban on plastic bags. He was a high school student. I think he may have graduated. Is that correct? Congratulations.
Congratulations.
You know, he seemed very enthusiastic and energetic about this, so I said, why don't we put you on the Board of Selectmen and come before the board and explain the position. Right now, and I'm sure you're gonna say this, but there are well over 100 communities that have plastic bans in place, something like 118. The state legislature is also considering a statewide plastic bag ban. And we'll have to see what happens with that legislation. But I thought it was an interesting concept and then wanted to invite him to the board.
Great. Why don't you guys formally introduce yourselves?
Thank you. So I'm Chase Lindsley. I'm co-president of the Environmental Club at Sutton High School. This is my communications director, Leah Garabedian. Unfortunately, my other co-president, John Del Sonoro, was not able to make it tonight, so I'm going to be reading part of his speech, what he wrote on the facts. So we're here today to present a petition to regulate the usage of plastic bags in Sutton businesses. So, for the past 5 years, I've been extremely passionate about the fields of environmental sciences and conservation. And at this point in my life, one thing I can say for sure is that the majority of people are blissfully unaware of the damage being done to our planet's ecosystem. And as I work in Market 32, so as an employee there, I've seen the vast numbers of plastic bags being used every day, and knowing that the majority of these bags will not be recycled and ultimately end up in landfills is just heartbreaking, to say the least. Most people currently recycle only 1 in every 200 plastic bags they use, and Massachusetts residents are estimated to use over 2.5 billion plastic bags per year, which is the equivalent of 1 bag per person every day. So, as Jim just mentioned, there have already been over 100 towns and cities in Massachusetts that have put restrictions on the usage of plastic bags, and we are here today to ask that Sutton does the same. In this petition, we have suggested a set of new regulations which we propose every store in the town of Sutton should follow. While our initial idea was for plastic bags to be banned completely, we eventually decided that stores should at least have recyclable plastic bags for a cost as an option for customers based on need. Our proposal is that stores primarily use paper and/or reusable bags for their checkout lines. We hope that by making these changes, we can encourage other towns in the area to follow for the continued benefit of the environment. Our generation needs to fix this problem, and every step we take is essential to making a difference in the world and minimizing the amount of damage being done to our environment. As a recent graduate of Sutton High School, our generation has watched our town develop. As we welcome this development, we are very mindful of climate change and the eroding effects on our environment. We feel strongly to speak on behalf of our generation to help invoke positive change. Thank you for your time and consideration of our proposal. Leah, if you wanted to add on.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm gonna tell you just a little more about our club at school and how we even came up with this idea. So our goals as an environmental club are not only to get students and staff involved in bettering the school's environment, but more so to advocate for the practice of habits that will eventually promote sustainability. To engage students, earlier in the year we designed a competition to see which grade could collect the most recyclable items in the school cafeteria. And we use this competition as our main platform to educate everyone in our school community about the devastating effects of plastic that Chase mentioned. Though this versatile material has the ability to be recycled, again, as Chase mentioned, most of it ends up in landfills anyways. And this is why we have decided to expand our high school club to the town.
Great. Thank you very much. So at this point, I would like to open it up to questions from the board. Jesse?
Good evening to you both. First off, I would like to congratulate you too. Coming before a board as such as ours is not necessarily a fun thing, I would imagine, or exciting thing. And I'm sure, there were a little bit of nerves, but, you did a great job, and I appreciate your efforts. I'm glad that you also, in full disclosure, I've known Chase since he was about knee-high, playing baseball over the years, so we actually go way back, and I was gonna call you Trout, just for old time's sake, so why not? It's on mic now, so I did. Again, I want to congratulate you again on the work that you put into this, but I do have some questions for you, and I understand the fact that you're both high school kids, so I will go easy on you. Chase, you mentioned the fact that you worked at Market 32.
Yes, I do.
I don't want to sound negative, but I don't shop there. I go to Goretti's. Call me old-fashioned, but I do. Does Market 32 have any type of collection bin there on site?
Not that I know of, but one thing. What? Oh, there is in the back. There's not that I've seen because I don't go in the back usually, but we do have some in our where you go to recycle cans and all that stuff. We have them in that area, I believe.
So it's tucked in the back of the building, but it's not in the front.
No.
I only mention that because I know Walmart, they have a big collection bin that they take back to recycling bags, and usually that's where I dump mine off when we go down there and go shopping. Have you talked to anybody at like the Singletary Pond Association or the Manchog Pond Association to see if, the bags floating in the water, is that an issue?
I have not talked to them, but no.
Okay. Have you talked to, like, for instance, the food pantry? The food pantry, they have a really good recycling program with the bags, because I know I do the collections from St. Mark Church, and most of the donations are made in plastic bags, and what they simply do is they untie them and they use the plastic bags to distribute the food out to the public. Have you talked to anybody like that?
I have not talked to anybody like that, no.
Okay. Again, my concern ultimately is the impact that it's going to have on residents. I understand, that we live in a global environment, and I understand the concerns of the plastic. But again, deep down inside, I'm not sure if Sutton has that much of an impact. I think maybe a better, it's kind of moot now that you've graduated, but maybe a better course would be to promote recycling as an effort as opposed to a ban. Because again, I know there's a lot of people that use these in different ways. And granted, I'm sure a lot of them throw them away because ultimately that's the lazy thing to do. But I think instead of going first with the ban, the best step forward would be to push for recycling. Because again, there's so many uses that you can, reuse these bags.
Yeah. Can I just say one thing?
Sure, absolutely, be my guest.
So yeah, I do agree with that there are many ways you can recycle these, but I understand that people don't want to ban them entirely. That's why most recently I decided that instead of just banning them entirely, you should at least still have bags as an option. I'm sure you've heard of some towns that are charging customers 5 cents for every plastic bag they use. So I want to still have them as an option. I just want to primarily switch to using paper and reusable bags, which is something that we do at Market 32. Actually, we've tried to promote that by we give customers a 3-cent discount for every reusable bag they use, and as a result, that has it's resulted in customers using that a lot more. But I just feel like if we switch from plastic to paper primarily, that will be the push that we really need as a town.
Okay, I got one last question for you. You mentioned the fee to use the plastic bags. Where does the money go?
That I have not looked into yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I, for one, think this is far overdue. As someone who uses purchase for use bags, I'm a huge proponent of this. To assume that we as a community are going to somehow be stifled by not having these bags that weren't around 20 years ago, the community functioned just fine, and I think we will continue to function fine, and I think this is part of an incredibly important worldwide movement to get rid of plastic straws, to get rid of beverage rings that are choking our animals and our birds. I applaud you both, and I applaud the school for supporting you in your efforts. I think this is incredibly important. I do like the idea of segueing it into the community, because I think it will be more, the response will be more welcoming at that point. It will be interesting to see if there is a fee, where those fees go. Do they go to the local food bank? Do they go to a nonprofit? I mean, all of those things would be really interesting to find out. And I know that you're in that fact-finding portion of your journey now. And it is a journey. And the fact that you're so involved now really speaks volumes to the changes that you will make over your lifetime. So I applaud you for that. And I, for one, am thrilled, and I will be happy to get signatures for you, because I am distressed by the amount of plastic that I see wrapped in trees, in places where it has no place being, and with a half-life of, 100,000 years, or probably even more. I mean, it's crazy. And so I applaud you for doing this, and thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Wendy. Absolutely think what you're doing is great. The fact that you're stepping up to do something about it and not just sitting back and letting somebody else solve for it, and doing something that adults typically can't do themselves. And so that, sometimes it takes kids to kind of take a fresh look at things and push this forward. So I really applaud you for standing up, and you're going to learn a lot in the process, and you'll probably hit a lot of roadblocks along the way. And I think that's part of the learnings of it. But I absolutely agree with you. When I hear about the stories of what's going on in the Pacific Ocean in particular with the huge plastic,
Great
Um,
Pacific Garbage Patch.
yes, it's immense. And I see plastic bags all around town all the time, hanging in trees, as Wendy said. The grocery store that I shop got rid of plastic bags years ago, 3-4 years ago, and I haven't missed them. We use plastic bags. We use paper bags, or we use the recyclable ones that we bring in ourselves, and it's really not a big deal. And sometimes if I forget my bag, then I'll just get a paper one. But there's choice there in what you want to use. And I think the convenience of these plastic bags does not outweigh the environmental costs. So I think it's good that you're bringing awareness to this issue. I do think, to Wendy's, and Jesse's point as well, is I think doing this in a kind of a graduated way and starting off with a fee to give people that choice, but incentivizing them towards a more environmentally friendly choice is a good idea. And then obviously if Massachusetts then decides to ban it as a whole, then the problem's solved. But I do think that even if it's just, we're in the process of doing this before that happens in Sutton, I think it's a symbolic gesture as well. So again, I just really appreciate the students kind of doing this work and coming out and coming before us to talk about what your ideas are and taking questions and being willing to put yourself out there. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for coming in. I know it's not the easiest, and I am actually impressed that after graduation you're actually here, which is great. So this is an issue that it's kind of hard to be against, because of all the good things that are associated with it. And I have one of the issues where Jesse had mentioned recycling being. I don't know what the recycling issues are now with China not taking recycling and the crisis in the recycling industry right now. So I don't know if that's what that means for something like this. But the fact is that most of these bags don't get recycled, right? I also didn't know that Walmart had a recycling center.
You did, right?
So I've never seen that. I was in Walmart over the weekend, and I knew this was going to be on the agenda, and I just saw those turnstiles with thousands of bags on them, and it's amazing. And if you don't, I never thought about it really that much before. I saw this, so I do applaud you for that. One of the issues that I had thought about is I think Grafton's the only town in
The Worcester County area.
that has passed this. I don't think it's caused right. But I don't think there's really many issues with people that I've heard of. I don't live there, obviously. So, but one of the things that I'm concerned might be too strong. But the issue that I can see with all 100 and something towns have passed these laws. Are they all the same law? Are they all written the same, or do some ban this kind? We allow dry cleaning bags. We don't allow dry cleaning. Those kind of things.
It depends on the town. I mean, some of them have banned them completely, which was our initial idea, and some of them are giving fees. So it really depends on how they look at it.
Yeah. So to me, it seems like a state law is probably more an appropriate kind of hopefully end result with this, so that across the state there's not variations from town to town. You're in Sutton now, what can you do with a plastic bag when you go to Northbridge or Grafton or whatever? So personally, I would like to see a state law. I don't know from the retailers. Have you talked to any of the retailers in terms of what costs they might be incurring, or whether this is an issue for them?
I have not talked to most retailers about this now.
Okay. Because that would be a thought, and I don't know what it would be, but I would think that there might be some issues with, let's say, a Stop and Shop. You can't have plastic bags in Grafton, but you can have them in Northbridge. You can't have it in Westboro or Shrewsbury. You can't have them, wherever. So that would seem to be, on a business perspective, that would be potentially an issue. That if the state law was in place would address all those things on a fair basis, I think, so. Do you know of any motion or movements, or I'm really not even sure what the process would be, have failed in any towns? Have any towns voted it down?
I actually haven't looked at that as far as towns that have not made interest passed these laws. I mean, I've only seen the ones that have been passed, which I've seen how they have different regulations. So
Yeah.
I haven't seen the ones that failed.
We'll probably drive around and see it just by that. So, thank you for coming in. Thanks for taking the issue up, and good luck with it. I do support it.
What do you had, additional comment?
If I may, just in response to one of your questions, there was a local fast food restaurant, takeout restaurant, that for a period of time had switched over to plastic containers for their sandwiches and plastic candle bags. And after losing quite a bit of business and getting quite a bit of phone calls from the community, they switched back to wrapping their sandwiches and putting their sandwiches and pastas and things in paper bags. So that was probably 2 or 3 years ago. So it's been out there, and that's why I think seeing a community like this perhaps pass this makes transition to a potential statewide ban a little more ease in that, because it's something you're familiar with. But so that was my perspective from a local business that did get some pushback when they had moved toward the
Interesting.
plastic. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, Jesse?
Yeah, I do have one, and I can't remember the town or two. I remember reading in the Globe, there were 2 towns that enacted it and decided to repeal it. I don't know what happened. I know the petition was brought up before the town meetings, but that's where I lost track of it in the newspaper. It was like Hingham or Taunton or something like that. But so again, there may be, because this is so new, there may be those communities that do decide to push back. So, until, to your point, until the state makes a decision one way or another, we don't know where this is gonna end up, I guess.
Jonathan?
What I'd also like to make a point of, I think it was a really good point of, the inconsistency of regulation can often cause a lot of challenges. But we also have to remember too that companies have a choice, right? That they could just decide to do it themselves without the regulation. And so if having a complex environment could force them much faster to decide to just make that choice themselves. So I agree that there should be probably a statewide ban just to make it simple, but in the meantime, I do not have a problem with the inconsistency, because hopefully we'll drive companies to make the right choice, which is to do this on their own. And I think this also educates people to the problem, and to your point, Wendy, with more awareness, when they do kind of head in a direction that people don't like, they self-correct, because it's all about money and making sure that they're creating the right experience for their customers, and they're going to make a change. So it's awareness. And so I think what you're doing is the right thing. And again, it also comes down to corporate responsibility as well.
Pretty good. So, my first comment would be, I think you thought this was a science project, but it's really a civics project. So I don't know if you anticipated quite as many questions tonight, but that's the way it goes sometimes. So we had a conversation before the meeting tonight, and as I said then, and Wendy picked up on it a little bit, I'm surprised this hasn't come before us sooner. There's just been so much conversation around the state, around the country, about this very thing, that I honestly just had anticipated somebody would already be doing this. So congratulations to you for sort of picking up a void and bringing this to us. No pressure, but I feel like it's your generation that's going to save the world. So go for it. My personally, I used to work for a plastics company. We didn't make this kind of plastic, but we made plastic. And back in those days, I used to have a sort of a personal thought about the difference between paper and plastic bags in grocery stores, and arguments why actually plastic was better. But it's been a long time, and there's been a lot of discussion and data, and mostly I think those arguments were really kind of spurious, and that particularly, regardless of the composition and the way that plastic is made versus paper, the long-term impact of plastic in the environment and the stats, the things you talk about with the impact on wildlife make it really clear to me that, you know, plastic packaging in general, in particular these plastic bags, where we use 200 million a year in Massachusetts, is just not healthy for us. So, you know, relative to plastic bag bans, I've had some of the same thoughts that have been brought up with inconsistencies in different communities, and so whether it's effective if you have a ban in Sutton, but none of the other towns around you have that, you know. But mostly, I think this kind of thing really is an effort to drive the discussion, and even if a pocketed restriction on plastic bags in one place may not be particularly effective overall, I think it just pushes the whole issue forward, and you know, makes it more of a public discussion to hopefully push the state to finally pass a law and have a consistent thing. So, you know, I view this as a really positive move forward. My question for you really is what you plan to do with the petition that you have here. Are you hoping to move forward and circulate it around and collect signatures?
I mean, I'm hoping I could, like, this summer. I mean, I'm leaving for college in a few months, so I don't know if Leah wants to help take it on her hands. But,
I'll leave it for the kids behind, sure.
but I just hope that, like, I can encourage people to follow my footsteps and, like, help with, like, basically, I'd like to collect as many signatures as I possibly can, and definitely in the town of Sutton. I mean, I have probably around 60 signatures already, which I know is not a lot, so it's definitely something to think about in the future.
Yeah, I would encourage that. You know, the other point I was going to make that I forgot to mention is that today, if you go to Market 32 or Walmart, paper really isn't an option. They don't really offer it. You know, so we have all sorts of reusable bags, but I can't tell you how many times I show up and I've forgotten them, and so you find you almost have to use the plastic if you're there. And I mean, we try to recycle them, but you know, reality is it just doesn't really happen. So,
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a point? If the board would like, I can draft a letter to the representatives to support this bill in the legislature to kind of, you know, I agree with the hodgepodge kind of system with communities have, the 118 communities all have different policies, and there's no one way of doing this. So I agree with Jeff that the state legislation is important. But if the board wants to, I can draft a letter and send that off to them if you so desire.
Let's take that up in just a sec then. So you know, we have our own set of challenges, just as I understand it. So in preparation for this, I think there's been some discussion around town hall. It sounds like we may need to have a bylaw change in order to make this effective here in Sutton, even with a petition. And certainly there is the state legislation that's in the works. I don't know how close that is to, do you know anything about the state legislation?
I do not know. I'm not the politician type of guy.
So, you know, that may be a thing that kind of supersedes what we might do here, but I certainly would encourage you to continue with this effort and keep pushing at the town. You know, that's the way change occurs. That's the civics lesson part, you know, and then you have to listen to all us questions.
Thank you.
So, and I guess I would take it up with the board if there's interest in having Jim pursue that letter.
Yeah, I can say that I for one,
Yep.
would be interesting in throwing our hat into the ring and supporting such legislation.
Do we need a vote for that kind of thing?
Well, considering the discussion of the board, I'd feel more comfortable if there's a general support of the board to write this letter. So
I'll accept the motion.
I would propose a motion directing Jim Smith to submit a letter to the legislature suggesting Sutton's interest in promoting legislation to ban the use of plastic bags.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm gonna say nay.
So that's a 4-1 vote on that.
Okay.
So thank you. So, really, thank you very much. This is a great effort, and we appreciate the work, and we're always grateful to have, especially young people, come to our board and represent your school so well. So,
Thank you
thanks
very
very
much.
much.
And at the very least, your mom has a very proud smile on her face right now, so. Great job, Chase.
Yeah, thank
Great
you.
job, Larry.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Have fun in Ireland.
I'll try.
Hopefully you're off the crutches before you go to Ireland.
Oh, no, I'll be in a booth by then. Okay, thank you.
Take care.
Our last regular agenda item tonight is the MRA Sports Summer Program, but unfortunately, Alex from MRA was not able to make our meeting tonight, so I think we're just gonna pass over that.
Yeah, and I'll just let you know that all of the documents are in place, all the licenses and insurance policies. We've got a Town of Sutton agreement with MRA. There is a calendar of events. It's probably in this packet. I'm sure it is. So you can review that all. You know, Alex just is busy at work and just couldn't get out, so I'll have to talk to him tomorrow and figure out what's going on. Even though I don't have the board pass a motion to agree, I like to have him come before the board and talk about what he plans to do. I know he's planning on having one triathlon this summer rather than two, which he's tried in the past. So it'll be the Summer Solstice Triathlon in June, and but hopefully he's able to come at a future meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
You know, he's always put on a great event. As you said, there's nothing really to vote on, but it's always good to have him come represent the work that he does, because he represents it very well, so.
I agree.
And a chance to bring awareness, because in gazing at their calendar, you know, they're gonna be in town a lot, so,
They will be.
yeah.
Ooh, and in June, that water is still cold.
Yeah, you know, they wear the swimsuits, or this, you know, Jesse wore one when he played the rescue for the fire department, but
I'm looking like a walrus.
And they're in the water by like 6 in the morning too, so.
they are.
All right, next up is our town manager's update. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few updates for the board. I've got the updates in your packet, and I also have a couple additional updates since the agenda went out last week. First of all, Memorial Day, I'd like to thank Debbie Jakes and Dave Carasias from the Dudley Gendron for all their planning efforts. I'd also like to thank the entire Board of Selectmen, as well as Congressman McGovern, who attended the event. I think Matt Stencil and the Highway Department did a great job preparing the cemeteries for the event, and I'd like to thank everybody that has been involved in pulling that off on an annual basis. Annual May town elections took place on Tuesday, May 28th. I think we had more than 125. I think we had 131 voters, give or take. What was the final? Was it 125?
Yep.
125. Whew. That was probably the lowest turnout we've had, I think, in the last. No offense to the people that got elected, but.
Maybe they thought it was a foregone
There was
conclusion.
no contested races this time, but obviously congratulations to Jeff for the election to the Board of Selectmen. The sidewalk at the elementary school, a bid was received finally from Matero Construction out of Worcester to redo the elementary school early learning center sidewalks. We've gone out to bid 3 times for this project, so it's been a little bit of a frustration. The bid came in at $48,850, which is within our budget, which is another positive. I've issued a notice of award. They've picked up the contract. They're reviewing that. So hopefully they will approve it, and the work will be done in the next month or two. So that's a positive. And the new Selectmen training will be held this Saturday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Sharon Community Center. And obviously the town will reimburse the registration fee. If any board members register for that, we will give us the copy of your registration, and we will take care of the cost. 2 additional items I'd like to add, Mr. Chairman, is the first one is J.D. Byrider, located at 49 Worcester Providence Turnpike, would like to change their name to just Byrider. They have a Class 2 license in the town of Sutton, so that would require the board sign a new license under just Byrider. So it's not an additional fee, but it is just a technicality that the board needs to sign this new license. And that will be available for you after the meeting. And finally, Marion's Camp will open next week, Saturday, June 15th, from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. So it's open. We've extended the hours from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Lifeguards are there. After 7 p.m., there are no more lifeguards at the beach, so people are there at their own risk if they choose to swim. The beach will remain open till August 18th, and the weekends of August 24 and August 31st, the beach will also be open. And swim lessons start on July 1st, and that's all I have for updates. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jim. Jesse?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, wonderful update, thank you.
Sure.
First off, I would like to second the thanks to Debbie and to Dave. It was a wonderful event, but I'd also like to throw out special thanks to Pam and Christine. Christine in particular, because when the parade started off, she's out there stopping traffic personally, so it was just excellent. And I know it couldn't have come off as well as it did without the hard work of Debbie and everyone else involved. And it was a good turnout, too. So I'd like to thank all the residents who came out and attended the event. It's a moving day, that's for sure, and it's an honor to be part of it. Sidewalk bid, that's huge. My wife and I, we've been going up to the school and doing some walking,
Yeah.
trying to get in shape and get some exercises in. And that section that we've been talking about for years is definitely long overdue, so it's
Yeah.
gonna be nice. Now, this is, I'm assuming, gonna be done during the summertime?
Yes, and I think the contractor is actually on the same page as the town with this, because they don't want kids running out and having to divert, and, it's an additional cost to have them do the work with kids and having to
Right.
limit work and move around, and now they have total access to it, they can just get the work done quickly.
And I'm assuming when the school has the summer camp, they'll just have the,
Yeah, Ted's well aware of this, I let him know of this bid. He's ecstatic and glad that came in, because he's been wanting to get this done for a number of years.
long overdue, that's for
Yeah.
sure. With the JD Byrider, is that a corporate change? Do you know?
It is. It's, so I guess something happened with JD. It's just Byrider now.
Oh, all right, that works.
JD got kicked to the curb.
Hey, sometimes you gotta have those
I know,
separations.
I know.
And Marion's Camp extending the hours, I think that's a good move, particularly when, summer gets here, if it ever is gonna get here. The last thing to do is, have to pack up if it's a warm summer's evening, so that extra hour, I think that's good. And by that time, the sun starts to set anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's perfect, so, excellent. Thank you, Jim, appreciate it, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Wendy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you to Debbie and everyone for all of your efforts. It was a wonderful day, and I have a personal thank you to Matt Stencil and Waters Farm for the use of their gator, because I couldn't actually walk in the parade, and thank you to my son for not running over anyone's feet. Welcome, Jeff. It is a pleasure to have you here. You bring a lot to the board, and I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you to the voters who did go out in the rain and vote. Super excited about the sidewalk bid. Finally, that is wonderful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for those updates. Those are critical items even during the summer that we haven't had yet.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Jim, for the update.
Sure.
And again, just to extend my my thanks to Debbie and Dave and Matt and everybody who was involved with planning and coordinating and all the work that goes into it. It was a really great day, and as Jesse said, it was a very moving experience. And I really encourage people to attend it, because it really just sends chills through your body as you experience and see some of these people get up and speak.
We had 2 World War II veterans
Yeah,
present.
that was pretty amazing.
Mm.
So I was very appreciative to be there. And yeah, congratulations, Jeff, for your landslide, and and just being willing to be on the board. I'm really looking forward to serving with you. And I think, yeah, I'm going to the new selectmen's training. And I think, Jeff, you're gonna carpool. I don't know if you're going, or,
We'll talk about that.
all right. So, looking forward to that, and that's all I have.
Great.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a lot, seeing how this is my first meeting, but thank you to all 125 people that came out to vote. It was no contested races and a really miserable, rainy, wet day. So thank you to all 125 for that. The Memorial Day services, honestly, the services, if you haven't been to the cemeteries, it is really a moving experience there, and it's just something that everyone should take part in and see what happens on that morning, because it really is a moving experience. And then the last thing is, as Jonathan mentioned, I'll be going to the Selectmen training on Saturday, which I heard today at the cookout from a former Selectman how beneficial it is. So I'm looking forward to that.
You can mention them by name, it's okay.
Former Selectman Maynard several times. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, Jim, thanks for the update. I also want to mention Memorial Day. It was great to have John have the ability to make his speech one last time. Once again, I sort of appreciate that. Yeah, I also want to thank Jim McGovern for coming. All of our representatives make an effort to come to these things whenever they can, and they have so many invites to different things. Especially for a statewide representative to come to our event is pleasing to me. I appreciate that they do that. And Jeff, I'm glad you mentioned the travel around to the cemeteries. For a number of years now, the veterans and the Dudley Gendron have invited the whole board to travel with them around to the cemeteries. Myself, I'm not a veteran, but they invite us to actually read the names at the cemeteries along with them. And it's really just a great honor, and it's such a well done event, and just a nice way to honor the dead in the cemeteries, and it's really, I'm proud to be able to take part in that. And so, especially for the new selectmen, if you have a chance to do it next year, I really encourage you to do that. I think the average age of the veterans at the Gendron is aging, and I think actually having our participation is helpful to them to just get through it all. Jesse and I and Ken Stewart actually split the names at Howard Cemetery. It took 3 of us, and each of us had a full page of names to read, and so it's a lot. But again, quite an honor.
464
Wow.
And
names in total in town.
and again, just the way they do the ceremonies is as Jeff said, it's an experience to get to. So, moving on to the sidewalk at the school, this has been a long time coming, and it's been 3 attempts maybe at
Yeah, and the biggest challenge is really the timing, because we only have this small window to get it done. And last we tried it again in the fall of last year, and and just put it out in I think late August, and said and I talked to Ted, and he said, we'll make arrangements, we'll figure it out, just get it done, and no bids came in. So I'm glad that bid came in.
Yeah, perseverance pays, right?
Yeah.
So it's a case where we got it in at the right cost, and we'll be happy to get it done. So that's really all I have on that. So thank you again. And as we do, I think we can combine announcements, roundtable, and correspondence. So, Jesse?
All right, thank you. I also, and I should have done this earlier, special thanks to Matt Stencil and the cemetery commissioners, because the cemeteries, I've been going around with Dave for the last couple of years, and the cemeteries were in the best shape. I mean, granted, it's a typical, atypical spring, but, they were just phenomenal. So thanks, Matt, and thanks to all the cemetery commissioners. I would also like to congratulate all of the residents of Sutton who graduated from BVT this past Thursday. I was in attendance at Hanover Theater in Worcester, and I'll tell you one thing. there was, I forget the exact number, I think 36 graduates from Sutton, and nearly every single person who went up there was either a member of the Honor Society, or they were on skills, or as we were calling it, bling, you know. So I think it speaks volumes to the group of kids that we have. Yes, they spent the last 4 years out of district, but you know, Blackstone Valley Tech is our technical vocational school, and to see this group of young people thrive in that environment, again, I think it speaks volumes to the good work that the school department does in preparing them to make that step. So congratulations to you all. I also have a very short food pantry list. I spoke to Diane this morning, and thank you to St. Mark's. I did make the delivery on Sunday, so it's a relatively short list, but it's an important list, so I'd just like to share it with the community. They're looking for shampoo, tissues, all types of cleaning supplies, sponges, and deodorants, women's and men. And last but not least, I'd like to thank Jim for shutting down Town Hall, and to Donna and Kyle, who manned the grill for the whole cookout this morning. It was a wonderful time. And you want to see how well Town Hall operates like a family, you know, all you have to do is attend that event, because there was just goodwill and laughing and a lot of camaraderie. So I think that goes to the leadership at the top. So thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I don't have a problem closing down Town Hall.
Yeah, no, especially when you're going to get, well, a veggie burger or whatever it was you were eating. But
Thank you, Jesse. Wendy?
I've got your back on the vegetable thing. Just a couple of things. I wanted to also give my congratulations to all the Sutton graduates, class of 2019. Bless your souls, and you made it, and you have a whole new journey ahead of you, and you know, you couldn't have a better venue to have the graduation, and best of luck to all of the graduates. Just a couple other quick things. We received a formal invitation from the 4th of July committee, who have requested the Selectmen's presence to march in the parade on June 30th. So any members who are not away on vacation and who are available, if you'd be willing to do that, if you just let me know, because we also have to sign waivers, and I can get those to you. And they would really like to see you present for that. And I just had one other thing, and it just escaped my mind. It's age. When I walk into my kitchen later, it'll come to me. But for the time being, that's all I have.
We can come back to you if you think of it.
Oh,
so.
thank you.
Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the only thing I have is I just want to congratulate the students from both Sutton and BVT for graduating and their journey ahead and the exciting times and all the learning that they're going to have, because the real learning starts now. So, yeah, so I just wanted to congratulate them. That's all I have.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also would like to extend my congratulations. And yeah, the real learning does start now, but the fun starts now too for a lot of them. So good luck to them. I will certainly be interested in marching in the parade, and I just ordered my T-shirt the other night, so
Oh, good for you.
I may even wear that. So
I'll be sporting mine.
okay.
That was actually the first question I had. What would the attire be? I won't have to get all.
Wear a T-shirt, that's kind of,
Yeah, that's where I
dressing
start
down
with,
a
you
little
know.
bit.
Patriotic.
Yeah.
No,
That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. I suppose I can't pass up the opportunity to congratulate the graduates, and it's a good night for it, because having impressive students in front of us tonight to make a speech just reminds us of the great foundation that they get here as they move forward to their next stop on the road. So, and also I'd like to thank everyone for the cookout today. It's for town hall employees, and technically that's us, but we're not here all the time, you know. And you know, we're not really. I don't feel like we're sort of really in the building like that. So I appreciate the invitation. It is, as Jesse says, it's really a great event every year. I have a lot of fun there, and so you know, I'm happy that you do it. I'm happy that we take the time to kind of celebrate the employees a little bit, and I'm just grateful to have the chance to be part of it. So, thank you. Did you think of it?
Yeah, no, it's in the great gray abyss.
All right. Then I will take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Welcome, Jeff.
Yeah,
Nice work.
welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.